and welcome back to ITK Reviews. I'm just here with Harry Richards to talk about his film Contract Hours. So, Harry, can you just introduce yourself and talk to us about your film Contract Hours?
Yeah, of course. So, I'm Harry Richards. I am the director and producer of Contact Hours, which is a short film that we shot it about 2 years ago, which is crazy. And then we released it in October 2024. And the film is about student suicide through the eyes of a university caretaker. So it's a subject that is not spoken about super widely, but there are a lot of charities and mental health advocates who are doing incredible work to shed more light on the issue. So Rufus Love, the film's writer and executive producer, and I, we wanted to use the cinematic medium as a way to hopefully get people to feel something about the issue, and for the film to become a kind of jumping off point for really important, hopeful conversation around suicide.
When Harry first reached out to me about this film, I watched it and I thought, oh my god, I love this film. This is fantastic. But then, unfortunately, I got triggered, so we couldn't do this because I was just so distraught. We're only doing this now in April because obviously I finally got to taking time to get my mental health together, and I feel like it's such an important topic that we need to discuss. So I'm glad that you brought that. This film is shot from the perspective of someone on the outside looking in, and I just want you to talk to me about why you chose to go in that direction as opposed to the more traditional point of view, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. So, the film follows a university caretaker, and we felt like this perspective was something that hadn't really been put on screen before. Suicide is something that affects so many different people. And when someone dies by suicide, it can have a really big ripple effect. So, like the caretaker that is the person that checks the students' radiators, or like the residential advisor in your university halls. And so we felt that actually the role of the university caretaker, it kind of is twofold, because on the one hand, their principal role is just to fix things in the university accommodation, but also the responsibility falls on them to be the one that knocks on the door to check if a student is still alive. Essentially, if a student hasn't been seen for a few days, then often, a student might report it, or if not, the caretaker would be the one that has to knock on the door, has to go in and find sometimes that a student has died, and that is an enormous burden to carry. And we felt like for many of these, for all the people that are in these roles, we felt that it was a really unique perspective that ought to be put on screen. And actually it came from a conversation that the writer Rufus had with a university caretaker.
That's fantastic. I was just about to ask you said you spoke about Rufus Love. I saw his name and I was like, I need to bring that up. He's the writer for this incredible film. And I just wanted to ask if you had any point of view to understand what inspired this book, why Rufus thought this was an important topic to write about, and then obviously discussing it. Discussing it, and what was the inspiration behind this film?
Yeah, so Rufus actually had a conversation. He was working in a bar a few years ago, and he got talking to someone that came in, and they said that they actually had to leave their position as a university caretaker because they had witnessed so many suicides. And, Rufus obviously thought that was just, crazy that this university caretaker had been through all of this really difficult trauma. Then it felt like it was a really unique perspective. So Rufus put together a first draft of a screenplay that was then called The Caretaker, and then I was lucky enough to receive that draft from Rufus, and I felt very strongly about the subject because at our university we lost a number of people in our university care cohort to suicide. So it was at that point that we then developed that version of the script into what became Contact Hours, and we started bringing in some other characters like the caretaker's son, because within the film we wanted to reflect not only the experience of the caretaker but also of the young person that is suffering from mental health challenges, and we kind of wanted to reflect this idea that like through having those difficult conversations with the people that are close to you, with your friends, with your family, with even just the person in the room next door, you are able to break the stigma just a little bit, show to that person that you are willing to listen and that you're not afraid to talk about suicide, and hopefully kind of break that cycle.
I want to talk to you more about the direction for this. There are a few things I noticed. I noticed that this film is not very dialogue heavy. It leans a lot on silence and like the emotion of what's happening, but also the way it's shot.
Yeah.
I find that there was a lot of like repetition in the scenes,
Yeah.
but it felt quite deliberate. So I just wanted you to talk to me about why you made the decisions to shoot it that way.
Yeah, so I think crucially, in terms of like the feeling that we wanted to convey, particularly in the first half of the film,
Yes.
it was really important from a directing point of view to create this feeling of like dread and fear. And we actually looked at references such as the work of Denis Villeneuve and films like Prisoners and Incendies, which are films that really like horrible feeling of like something is about to go wrong. And I think that was a really important feeling to convey, because when you're worried about a friend or a family member and you think they might be at risk of suicide, it's horrible. It is this like really gut-wrenching, overwhelming like fear. And to really put us in the perspective of the caretaker, we wanted to quite deliberate with the filmmakings. You know, we really follow the caretaker through his daily routine. We hear the sounds of the like metallic doors that he walks through and the whirring fans in the university accommodation. And I think crucially we wanted to depict the contrast in the two worlds that the caretaker adopts. So the kind of warmer, cozier feeling of his home, where there's music and there's rich cooking on the stove, and then the more like sterile
Grey lighting
of the university accommodation. And that's not to say that, you know, all university accommodation is like that, but I think it was really intended to depict what it would feel like, or what it can feel like if you're a student and you are feeling very cut off from the world, if you're staying in accommodation where you don't really know anyone, or you feel like you don't have kind of a sense of community anymore. Quite often going to university, like you are leaving behind a school community, you're moving away from home, and suddenly it can be challenging, that shift. And particularly in a lot of modern accommodation, like you have these kind of fire doors that like are practically very safe because they protect you from a fire, but from a mental health point of view,
you feel locked in.
Yeah, you feel locked in. And actually they really like the doors themselves, like they kind of block out all sound. They're kind of soundproof. And so that's something that like I really remembered quite viscerally from university, how kind of when the door shut, it's like you were just locked off from the rest of the world and you're just with yourself, and it can be quite isolating to be kind of alone with your thoughts. And so in the sound design, we really worked a lot with our sound designer to create that feeling of like, once you go into that room, it can feel like this kind of very dark vacuum in a way. And it's horrible, but hopefully we feel that by depicting that in the earlier part of the film, by the end of the film, when the sound of the birds and the life kind of returns, and we have the scene with the caretaker and the caretaker's son in this kitchen with kind of warmer light coming through.
Softer emotion.
It's a bit softer, and we hope that kind of that feeling created is one of hope, and that kind of out of the darkness, when you have those like interactions and those conversations, like we're having now, even just like a bit of laughter or a touch or a gesture, it can really like it sounds like such a cliche, but it can actually like really lift someone out of quite a dark place, even just the small gestures.
I love everything I'm hearing, and the reason I'm saying I love it is because I'm such a lighting babe. I love lighting film. I don't want to laugh too much because the topic is so big, but I did notice the grey in the hallways in comparison to the warm lighting in the caretakers.
Yeah.
So for you to touch on that, knowing that was deliberate, I feel like I definitely got the point you were trying to make, because it did feel warmer. It felt like you were having a vulnerable conversation with caretaker themselves. And every single time we're in his home, especially after the fact, the fact, it was just a bit lighter. It wasn't too heavy, and I did notice that. So that was wonderful.
Thank you.
And just speaking to you, I love how passionate you're about it. It seems like you're coming from a point of view where you've seen it happen, which is probably what inspired you to direct it. Thinking that the world needs to know more about this. We need to talk more about it so we can prevent it. I saw the other day on a billboard that in the UK, I think 18 people, maybe 1 in 8, commit suicide every day. And I was like, that's such a horrible number to have. So I'm glad that we're speaking about this so more people can talk about it. So this leads me to my next question. Obviously, you've won an award for this, but you're showing this film in school as well. And can you just talk to me about what you balancing the storytelling with the responsibility of talking about such a huge subject, and how you did that for couples?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think on your point about the stats, I think what's been really interesting from speaking to charities along the way that have, really on the front lines of suicide prevention and raising awareness of suicides that are going on at universities.
Yes.
All of the stats can be helpful sometimes in helping put a number on the issue, but actually every suicide is a tragedy. That is the most important thing to remember. And it's regardless of how many people have died this year, if that number is going down, if that number is going slightly up, I think overall it is going slightly down, which is amazing, but it is still, every suicide is a tragedy, and there are still people dying by suicide. And, since we made this film, people in our community have died by suicide as well. And, even despite the work of the charities and the people around us and the film, and it is something that just needs to be kept being talked about. And I think what we hope with this film is that the film has a life where it keeps encouraging those conversations long after we release it, because the issue doesn't go away. It is a huge responsibility, and to be honest, while we were making it, particularly in the early stages, I did have some anxiety about that responsibility, about whether we were kind of justified in telling this story. And I felt I think Rufus and I both felt a lot of responsibility to the people that have been the most affected by suicide, to the parents that have lost children, to the people that have lost best friends, and I think that we kind of, gained confidence over the course of the process by speaking to those people, by having those difficult conversations. And really, we just are so grateful to all of those individuals that really helped us understand what it feels like to lose someone that's incredibly close to you, and what might have been going through that person's head to get them into that really difficult place. Something that we actually did, Rufus and I, quite early in the process, which was just the most amazing experience and important, perhaps the most important part of our journey, was we went down to Brighton for 2 days, and we did a 2-day applied suicide intervention skills training course, which is called Assist. And I would highly recommend for everyone to do that. Yeah, so start the conversation. They run these Assist trainings. So that is a woman called Rose Rokins, who was actually our head of psychological safety on the set and throughout post-production and pre-production, making sure that everyone had a safe space to talk about how they were feeling. And a lot of people on the team had been affected by suicide, so it's really important that we had that space to talk about it. And Rose, she very kindly invited Rufus and I down to Brighton a few months, actually probably about 9 months before the shoot. And we actually learned how to have a conversation with someone that is at risk of suicide, that is in a very vulnerable place, how to spot the signs of someone that might be struggling. And often that is really difficult, because as we know, even the smiliest person can be someone that is suffering. But that was just a brilliant couple of days, because it gave us the kind of confidence to understand how to have those conversations. And on that course with us were people like doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, all people that are on the front line. And I think that was just like, it was actually, you know, you might think that sounds really like miserable.
No, that's not
But-
like you took the time to basically focus on the topic you was speaking about. That's the responsibility you're talking about. That's fantastic.
But it was also, you know, it was just like a room full of hope, because it was a room full of people that really cared about trying to change the status quo. Yeah, and I think I'm very grateful still to Rose for like getting us down there and for inviting us, because I think that really stayed with us, that experience.
It's such a this conversation is so like. I'm so glad, because like I told you when I first watched it. I don't know if I gave you the breakdown of what it was.
I think so,
I
maybe.
think I
Yeah,
did.
you
It was
just
not
said
so
a very
bad.
nice
Yeah,
message.
it was such an important topic. I really do think, and having this conversation, obviously, I can see how much work and thought process you put into this, and that was so clear from the film, because like, it really did something for me to be triggered. I don't get that easily triggered unless I watch like horror films. I don't get that. I was like, usually I'm ready for anything, but I thought you did a great job. Thank you so much for seeing
Of course.
this, Harry. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Bye, ITK Reviews. Thank you for listening.